So we've been reading about the worlds of griefless life. So I'm going to read on from line 416. In a happy series, climbed or plunged these worlds, in realms of curious beauty and surprise, in fields of grandeur and of Titan power, life played at ease with her immense desires. 1,000 Edens she could build, nor pause. No bound was set to her greatness and to her grace and to her heavenly variety. Awake with a cry and stir of numberless souls, arisen from the breast of some deep infinite, smiling like a newborn child at love and hope, in her nature housing the immortal's power, in her bosom bearing the eternal will. No guide she needed but her luminous heart. No fall debased the Godhead of her steps. No alien night had come to blind her eyes. There was no use for grudging ring or fence. Each act was a perfection and a joy. Abandoned to her rapid fancy's moods and the rich colored riot of her mind, initiate of divine and mighty dreams, magician builder of unnumbered forms, exploring the measures of the rhythms of God. At will she wove her wizard wonder dance, a Dionysian goddess of delight, a bacchant of creative ecstasy. This is life. Life played at ease with her immense desires. Will you start, Suresh?
In a happy, serious, claimed or bent these words, in realm of curious beauty and surprise, in fields of grandeur and of Titan power, life played at easy with her immense desire.
Yes. So these worlds of life, these worlds of the griefless life, they're a happy series, and we can look at them climbing up or we can look at them plunging down, but whichever way we see them, it's a happy series. And they are all different. Some of them are realms of beauty and surprise, curious beauty, strange, unusual beauty and surprise. And some of them are full of grandeur and nobility, Titan power. Everything's on a large, powerful scale. With whatever they are like, life is playing at ease. She can just easily play whatever she wants. There's no strain or stress or difficulty. She could build 1,000 Edens. In the Bible we read about the Garden of Eden, paradise, the beginning of our world. So she could build 1,000 different paradises without having to stop. She didn't have to pause, not pause. No bound, no limit was set to her greatness and to her grace and to her heavenly variety. All this immense possibilities and change and differences, but all of it is heavenly. Alice.
Awake with a cry and stir of numberless souls, risen from the breast of some deep infinite, smiling like a newborn child at love and hope and need, in her nature housing the immortal's power, in her bosom bearing the eternal will. No guide she needed but her luminous heart.
Let's pause there. Long sentence. So this is life. She's awake. She can feel this cry and stir movement of numberless souls, countless. Awake with a cry and stir of numberless souls. And it's as if the life goddess, in the Greek mythology, this goddess of love and life, she's born from the ocean. It's something like that, arisen from the breast of some deep infinite, like the ocean. She's come up out of that, smiling like a newborn child at love and hope. Nowadays, sometimes on YouTube or the TV, we see videos of newborn children, and they look so happy. It's astonishing. We used to think, and in Savitri it says, that our birth is born with a pang, with pain and a cry. But nowadays, sometimes it's not like that. And sometimes they are twins. They've been together all that time, and now they're born, and they're out, and they look so happy and delighted to see each other and to be together. So it's something like that. She's smiling like a newborn child at love and hope. In her nature, this life goddess, in her pure state, she's holding within herself, housing within her, the power of the immortal, the deathless being. In her bosom, in her heart, she's bearing the eternal will. It's not any limited will. It's the eternal will of truth. So she doesn't need any guide except her own luminous heart, her heart that's full of light. Rita.
No form debased the Godhead of her steps. No alien night had come to blind her eyes. There was no use for grudging ring or fence. Each act was a perfection and a joy.
Yes. So far, no fall has debased, has brought down or spoiled her steps. No? The Godhead, the divinity of her steps. No alien night had come to blind her eyes. On Sunday we are reading in Canto 8, and there the alien night has come, and the life goddess has become such a terrible being. But this has not happened yet. So there's no use, there's no need for any limit, no boundary, no ring or fence. Grudging is when you don't want to give anything. So if you put a ring or a fence around somebody, you don't want them to have free room. But in her case, there's no need for that. Each act, everything, single thing she did was a perfection and a joy. Sarojini?
It wandered through her rapid fancies almost, and the rich-colored riot of her mind, unchained of divine and mighty dreams, magician builder of unnumbered forms, exploring the measures of the readings of God. At will see word or
Wizard
under dance. The mission goddesses of delight.
Bacchant, a bacchant.
Of creative
Ecstasy, yes. So she's abandoned. She can move absolutely freely according to the moods of her rapid fancy and the rich, colored riot of her mind. A riot is when people are out of control, no? And sometimes with creative people it's like that. There's so many creative ideas. This is a rich, colored riot, a joyful riot of her mind. And she's an initiate. She knows the secret of divine and mighty dreams. She has the power to build unnumbered forms, so many we can't count, with her magic power. And she uses those possibilities to explore all the different measures, the rhythms of God, the measures. It's a way of keeping the rhythm in music, no? So she's exploring freely and at will, just the way she wants, without any limit or constriction. She's weaving her wizard wonder dance, her magical dance. And he describes her as a Dionysian goddess of delight, a Bacchant of creative ecstasy. These are two different words, Dionysian and Bacchant, but they have very similar meanings. Dionysian, this is from Dionysus, who was the ancient Greek god of wine and divine intoxication, Dionysus. And in the Roman religion, which came a little later, the name of that god was Bacchus. So it means the same thing. The worshippers of Bacchus are the Bacchants, the Bachantes. And Sri Aurobindo uses this word several times in Savitri, in the poem. The Bacchants, what they used to do was to dance in circles in front of the image of their god. And they would go into trance, they were enchanted, they were in this state of ecstasy from their singing and their dancing. So she's like that, full of a divine delight, a Dionysian goddess of delight. Yes, yeah.
Is the Bacchus is at that time pure, or is it a way of desires?
I mean, we usually think of these ecstasies as something a bit doubtful, yeah, because people are out of control. But when we think that it's a divine intoxication, here it is pure. Yeah.
And later it looks like half goat and half.
No, they go along with. There were another kind of worshipper of Bacchus. We see in the beautiful Renaissance paintings. There he is in his car, and he has these satyrs with him, these wood spirits who look like goats standing on their back legs with their little horns and their pointy ears, but they have almost human faces, impish faces. So these are kind of wood spirits. When we see the pictures of the procession of Bacchus, they are there. There are male satyrs, but there are also these female wood spirits, the dryads who live in trees. No? And yes, the idea is of a procession of people who are out of control. They are just in such an ecstatic state. And that's envisaged as a divine delight. It's intoxication, maybe from drinking too much wine, but that's the wine of immortality or of divine delight.
In 126 we got the same word,
Yeah.
celestial bacchanal, forever pure.
So a bacchanal, that is that procession, that revelry, that party that goes on when all these beings are celebrating and enjoying. Yeah. A bacchanal. And these two different names, Dionysus and Bacchus, Sri Aurobindo seems to make them interchangeable. No. They're just the Greek and the Latin name for the same god. So these are these wonderful worlds of life. We've been reading about them for several weeks now, haven't we, from the break on page 120. So now we've come to the last section of this canto. Will you read, Nidish?
This world of bliss he saw and felt its call, but found no way to enter into his joy. Across the conscious gulf there was no bridge. A darker air encircled still his soul, tied to an image of unquiet life.
So this he is King Asvapati. He's the one who's exploring all these subtle worlds, on all the different planes of existence. And he's seen these worlds of griefless life. He's seen this world of bliss, and he can feel all its attraction, how wonderful it is. But he can't find any way to enter into it. He's not able to reach there. There's a gulf, a big, deep canyon in between that can't be crossed. There's no bridge. Why is it like that he can't enter there? He's been able to see and identify and understand, but he can't enter. It's because he's still too close to our human nature. A darker air is still encircling his soul, and that darker atmosphere and his soul are still connected to this image of unquiet life, the life that we know, that he experienced at the beginning of the canto, all that uncertainty and risk and danger, the image of unquiet life.
Is it because of ego? Because of ego?
It's because I think of human nature. He's making this journey as a representative of humanity, and so we are not yet able to live in that pure delight. So that is his problem. And how has that difficulty come about? That's what we will read about next. Yeah. Will you read, please? Yes.
In spite of yearning mind and longing sense, to a sad heart by grace experience form, and a vision dim by care and sorrow and sleep. All this seemed only a bright, desirable dream, conceived in a longing distance by the heart, of one who walks in the shadow of earth's pain.
So he's feeling this yearning of the mind for those worlds of bliss. And the senses, our physical senses, are longing for that world. But the problem is that our human consciousness has this habit of sad thought that's been formed, it's been shaped by our grey experience. When we are newborn children, we can laugh at love and hope. But as we get older, we get shaped by this grey experience. And our vision gets dimmed. It's like cataracts over our eyes. We can't see clearly anymore because of all the anxiety, the care, and the sorrow, and the unconsciousness, the sleepiness. So to that consciousness, which Aswapati is also carrying with him, all these worlds of bliss seemed only like a bright, desirable dream. They can't be really real. And that dream must have been conceived, thought up at a distance, at a longing distance, by the heart of one, like Aswapati, like us, somebody who is walking in the shadow of earth pain, all the suffering that is here on earth. How can we enter those griefless worlds?
What does it mean by care?
Sorry? Care. When you have many cares, you have many anxieties and worries. Yeah. Somebody who doesn't care, who's careless, they don't have those troubles, but we adult human beings, often we are full of care, we call it worry and anxiety. Joel.
Although he once had felt the eternal's clasp, so near to suffering worlds his nature lived, and where it stood were entrances of night. How deeply close, beset by the world's care, can the dense mold in which we have been made return sheer joy, pure light to light.
Yes. So we read long back now about King Aswapati in Canto 3 and Canto 5, about how he had really felt the embrace of the divine, no? Although he once had felt the eternal's clasp, still he's living, and especially now when he's traveling, he's too near to suffering worlds. His nature is like our human nature. It lives to those, near to those worlds of suffering. And where he is now, where he's standing at this point, were entrances of night. Later he will enter and go down these paths leading down into the darkness. So the poet says that this is a general thing. It's too difficult for us. Hardly. We are too close beset by the world's care. It's the same care, the anxieties and worries that's too close to us. It's like we are under attack, to be beset. It's like being besieged. You're surrounded by them and they are pressing on you and attacking you all the time. The dense mold in which we have been made, this stuff, this substance that we are made of, it's not subtle, light, airy, fairy stuff that can easily float up. It's dense and it's attacked by worry and care and fear. So it's very difficult for this substance that we are made of to return sheer joy, pure delight to joy, and pure light to light. Even if we experience those things, we can't spontaneously respond to them in the same way. And why is that? Bhavana.
Form its tormented will to think and live, first to immediate pain and pleasure, hope, and still it keeps the habit of its birth. A direct duality is our way to be.
Yes, that's our trouble. There's something in our physical being, this tormented will. It has to think, it has to live. And when it woke up, when it begins to be conscious, it becomes aware of this mixture of pain and pleasure. And it's still, even when we become more conscious, still it keeps that habit. We will read more about it, how this habit gets established in our very physical being. So because of that, this terrible duality of opposites, good and bad, and sorrow and happiness, and light and dark, love and hate, it's all mixed up in our consciousness. That's our way of existing, of being. And in this section, Sri Aurobindo will tell us how that happened. We can start seeing Martin.
In the crude beginnings of this mortal world, life was not, nor mind's play, nor heart's desire. When earth was built in the unconscious void, then nothing was, save the material scene, identified with sea, and sky, and stone, the young gods yearned for the release of souls, asleep in objects, vague, inanimate.
It's a picture of the beginning of the world. in the crude beginnings of this mortal world, this world which is where we human beings live. There wasn't any life. There wasn't any mind. There was nothing like the heart's longing. When earth was built in the unconscious void, when our planet came into existence, there was nothing except matter. Whatever could be seen was all made of matter. Sea, sky, stone. No living plants or animals or anything like that. Then, at that time, the gods, the divine powers that belonged to the earth, were involved in matter. They were identified with the sea and the sky and the stone. But something in them wanted souls to wake up. The souls were there, potential, latent in the matter, but as if deep asleep. The young gods wished for those souls to be set free. There they are, asleep in objects, in rocks and stones, vague, almost no consciousness, inanimate, lifeless. That's how it was at the beginning of the world. Will you read?
In that desolate grandeur, in that beauty there, in the deaf stillness, mid the unheeded sounds, heavy was the uncommunicated load of Godhead in a world that had no means. For none was there to feel or to receive. This solid mass, which brooked no throb of sense, could not contain their vast creative urge. Immersed no more in matter's harmony, the spirit lost its statisque repose.
Yes, so interesting. It was a kind of beauty, but desolate grandeur, because there's nothing living there. In that beauty, bare, no trees, no flowers, no animals, nothing, just sea and sky and stone. In that deaf stillness, there were sounds, but there was nobody to hear them. The sounds were unheeded, nobody to pay attention to them at all. It's as if all that was carrying a load. A load it had to carry alone, no chance of communication. The divine presence in this world where there's no needs, purely material world. None was there. There are no sentient beings to feel or to receive any message, any sound, any sensation. So this solid mass of the earth, which didn't allow, here the word brook means to allow or to permit. It doesn't allow any throb of the senses, no feeling at all. There's not the consciousness to feel anything. That solid mass couldn't contain this immense creative urge of those powers, those divinities. It's as if matter begins to wake up. or not the matter itself, the spirit inhabiting the matter. It's no longer immersed, drowned in matter's harmony. The spirit lost its statuesque repose, as if it's just a piece of stone.
Is the spirit in this case part of the divine?
Yes, the spirit, the divine presence in matter, in the unconscious. There must have been a moment when something wanted to wake up.
There is one, maybe not so related, but there is one recent book written by a neurologist who lost his consciousness for 7 days due to a sickness.
Yes.
Proof of heaven?
Yes, a proof of heaven.
Yeah.
And when he is down and lost, the description is so similar.
Yeah, something like
the beginning of life. Only it's all in mud and rock and just a bit of movement, but
yes.
very condensed.
So Sri Aurobindo will describe this very minutely in the next canto, how life began to emerge out of matter. But how did it get into matter? Here, it was there, of course, potential. I'll read on a little bit. In the uncaring trance of matter, it, the spirit waking up, groped for sight, feeling its way, trying to see, passioned for the movements of a conscious heart. It feels the need for this consciousness and emotion. Famishing. Famishing means starving to death. Famishing for speech and thought and joy and love. In the dumb, insensitive wheeling day and night, hungered for the beat of yearning and response, of communication. The poised inconscience, the unconscious world was in perfect equilibrium and harmony, but now it's shaken with this touch of the beginning of waking up. The intuitive silence, trembling with a name. This is those gods, the young gods, they cried to life, to invade the senseless mold, and in brute forms awake divinity. So there's an aspiration, and we will see that at every step of evolution it's like that. At first something stirs. There's an almost unconscious call, and then there's a response from above. So when there's this call, they call to life, then the wonderful life goddess, she comes down into matter, and she wants to spread all her beauty and her joy and everything. And she does spread it. But, he says, while the magic gift was on its way, before it could reach our hearts, a dark, ambiguous presence questioned all. The wonderful power of life, it's descending from those worlds of griefless bliss, but it's coming into our world and it gets swallowed up in matter. And then slowly, 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 it has to emerge. The mother says the same thing happened with the supramental. Yeah? When she lifted the hammer and the door opened. All the wonderful supramental light and force came pouring down, and she said great waves of unconsciousness came and swallowed it all up.
Huta's painting is there.
Huta's painting is there. Yeah, right. And then Mother told Huta, she said, but it's there. It has come into the earth. So the earth will have to wake up. And just like life has emerged and mind has emerged, spirit has emerged, supramental also, it will work its way out. And the fact that it's there and it's working, it's changing. Even now, it is changing matter. It's changing consciousness all over the world. We are not very aware of it happening, but it's going on. That golden yeast is working.
There's hope.
There's definitely hope. There's even certainty, yes, that it will emerge. And Mother said, a new world is born. It really is born.
Shraddhavan, you have your books over there with all the beautiful
Yes.
paintings, Buddhist paintings. And if you could say a word about what Mother said about this thing, this, I don't know, this being, but it had no shape, but it was like dark blue, very, very dark blue. And it was in the bowels of, I don't know, consciousness.
Well, it's a similar process. When the Mother sent her consciousness right deep down into the inconscient, she said that was the mental inconscient. Yeah. So it's not quite the same as the matter, the unconsciousness of matter. It's not the same as those deep down terrible levels of life that we are reading about on Sundays. It was something else. She said it was so solid, so hard and fixed and immovable, stifling.
Did she call it the inconscient?
I think she called it the inconscient.
Well,
I think she said
about in that book, he describes almost the same thing.
So, of course, if you're in a coma, if you become conscious, and if something in you, conscious, wakes up, it will feel that. Sometimes in a dream it may happen, you know. You go into a deep, dark place and you can't get out. Sometimes sticky things holding on to you. So these are real experiences.
That's what this neurosurgeon experienced.
I mean, the amazing thing is, it's almost as if he was missioned to have this experience, because, you know, it happened in his own hospital, and so all the doctors were around. They knew something was terribly wrong with him, and he was definitely, as far as they were concerned, clinically dead, you know, for several days. And then he astonished them all by waking up and being able to speak about his experiences. And then you can say it's delusion or something, but he had better evidence than anybody. Yeah.
And also it seemed like he generated such a strong cry or wish for the light,
yes,
that as soon as he generated it, he went up. Towards the light, and then everything was open and the divine, the wisdom.
So that's what we can all do, no? When we, even before we leave our bodies. But definitely it's a good thing to do when we are leaving the body.
What really reminded me of that book really was the first thing I found that really reminded me of this point of Savitri and what we're talking about now.
Yes. So that's one of the things that Savitri tells us about all these different levels of existence and the interconnection and the change. And this is the process of sacrifice. Yesterday we were reading about sacrifice. No? If there's an aspiration, it's a kind of giving and a call, and then there always will be a response. And that's the way that evolution works. It's this process of calling, being receptive, and then the response comes. And if you respond, and didn't you say about the oscillation? Yeah? This is the way that things change, that the transformation happens. But this is a very, very beautiful description of it. In this particular section, we haven't got to the end of it yet, but it's so made so pictorially clear that we can easily remember it. So let's stop there for today. In a happy series, climbed or plunged these worlds, in realms of curious beauty and surprise, in fields of grandeur and of Titan power, life played at ease with her immense desires. 1,000 Edens she could build, nor pause. No bound was set to her greatness and to her grace and to her heavenly variety. Awake with the cry and stir of numberless souls, arisen from the breast of some deep infinite, smiling like a newborn child at love and hope, in her nature housing the immortal's power, in her bosom bearing the eternal will. No guide she needed but her luminous heart. No fall debased the Godhead of her steps. No alien night had come to blind her eyes. There was no use for grudging ring or fence. Each act was a perfection and a joy. Abandoned to her rapid fancy's moods and the rich coloured riot of her mind, initiate of divine and mighty dreams, magician builder of unnumbered forms, exploring the measures of the rhythms of God, at will she wove her wizard wonder dance, a Dionysian goddess of delight, a bacchant of creative ecstasy. This world of bliss he saw and felt its call, but found no way to enter into its joy. Across the conscious gulf there was no bridge. A darker air encircled still his soul, tied to an image of unquiet life. In spite of yearning mind and longing sense, to a sad thought by grey experience formed, and a vision dimmed by care and sorrow and sleep, all this seemed only a bright, desirable dream, conceived in a longing distance by the heart of one who walks in the shadow of earth pain. Although he once had felt the Eternal's clasp, too near to suffering worlds his nature lived, and where he stood were entrances of night. Hardly too close beset by the world's care can the dense mould in which we have been made return sheer joy to joy, pure light to light. For its tormented will to think and live first to a mingled pain and pleasure woke, and still it keeps the habit of its birth. A dire duality is our way to be. In the crude beginnings of this mortal world, life was not, nor mind's play, nor heart's desire. When earth was built in the unconscious void, and nothing was save a material scene, identified with sea and sky and stone, her young gods yearned for the release of souls asleep in objects, vague, inanimate. In that desolate grandeur, in that beauty bare, in the deaf stillness, mid the unheeded sounds, heavy was the uncommunicated load of Godhead in a world that had no needs. For none was there to feel or to receive. This solid mass, which brooked no throb of sense, could not contain their vast creative urge. Immersed no more in matter's harmony, the spirit lost its statuesque repose. In the uncaring trance, it groped for sight, passioned for the movements of a conscious heart, famishing for speech and thought and joy and love, in the dumb, insensitive, wheeling day and night, hungered for the beat of yearning and response. the poised inconscience, shaken with a touch, the intuitive silence, trembling with a name. They cried to life to invade the senseless mould, and in brute forms awake divinity.